So you're welcome to the third part of our lesson, which is the pattern drafting processes and techniques. Now, in our introductory section, I told you guys that pattern drafting involves processes, right? You have to go from one step to the other, and then you get your final result at the end of the day. Now, the goal actually is to always get a perfect fit for your garments. That is the goal of employing pattern drafting. It's not to frustrate you. The goal is not to frustrate you. The goal is actually for you to get a very good result at the end of the day. Trust me, every method that I've employed in pattern drafting has worked out for me. It has never failed me. And I know there was a time someone contacted me. I wanted to know the kind of pattern drafting what did you call it again, system I was using. If I was using Nico Bay, if I was using Armstrong, if I was using, she wanted to know all those pattern drafting techniques that are applicable to those that have written books in the past. And I told her I don't use any of them. And she was like, what? So how do you now draft your patterns? Now, personally, I want to quickly address that before we move on because I feel like some people might be expecting that from me, and I just want to really clear the air before we continue. Now, I have read those books. I have them. In fact, if you want them, you can let me know and I can drop a link for you to download them. I have electronic copies of this book. I have read them, I have practiced them. And one thing I've learned is that these people did not write this book so that you can idolize them. Now, these people wrote this book so that you can learn and improve. I'll probably go above them. Now, the reason they some people use them as references is so that other people can kind of like, it's like a reference. Like, how do I put it? It's like giving thumbs up to who did who what. Okay, thumbs up to who did. What's the English again? Credits. Yeah. I think that's what I'm trying to use. Now, the reason people use their methods is so that other people can be able to learn from them, because sometimes in this book they don't really spell it out. They just draw the diagram for you and put 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10, and then they start explaining how you go from 1 to 2, from 2 to 4, from 4 to 5, now for people like me that don't have patience, we don't bother to, once we just see such books, we're just discouraged and we just move on and go and be looking for videos on YouTube. And then we see someone on YouTube saying patterns drafting using Nikobe's method, and then we're like, oh, this is what the person was trying to explain in the book. Do you get it? Now, the reason people put up these systems is so that you can learn from it and then improve on your own. So whenever someone comes to ask me what system I'm using, I'm like, it's my own system. Oh, I've developed my own. I'm too old to be following somebody's system. But yeah, besides, those techniques that these people use have evolved from when they taught you to now. Other ideas are coming up. Ideas like pattern draft, pattern magic. Ideas like what's the other one again? Um, pattern construction. What's the name again? I've forgotten it again. I always forget names. I think I can't remember right now, but I think I'll leave. If by the time I start editing this video, I'll put the name for you. You will remember the name. Now my point is, people evolve, things change. So as much as you want things to be done the way they were, I prefer to find things out for myself. Now, the reason I brought this up is because even my computer, my open source soft computer pattern drafter software gives you the option of using Adrich, Armstrong, Nico Bay, or pattern drafting system the way they did there, so that you can learn from it. So I don't want you to expect that from me. Everything I'm teaching you is are things that I've learned from my experience. Now, reading those books, I got to particularize the way they did it, but eventually I got to learn on my own style of doing things. So this is Prince's pattern drafting system. Alright guys, so let's look at the pattern drafting processes and let's get familiar with them. Now, like I said, pattern drafting involves a lot of processes, and you have to learn to be patient to go through all of it so that you can get to the end result. Now, the purpose of pattern drafting is to ensure you are able to test out your pattern, and if there is any adjustment you want to make, you can go back to the drawing board or back to the pattern that you have drafted, adjust it to get that perfect fit that you're looking for. So pattern drafting doesn't just stop from you drafting out the patterns. Like I told people, if you have been in pattern drafting classes where they just draft the pattern for you and you see how they do it, they are not teaching you anything. You are not learning anything. They should be able to test out their patterns for you to see on perhaps a dress form or even on themselves, so that you can see if what they have taught you actually makes sense and can decide for yourself if you want to actually employ that idea. Okay, so like I said, your pattern drafting tutor should be able to test out the ideas. Now, for those of you who have been in my Telegram channel at the key effect update, you will notice that every pattern that I draft in my start illustration, I always test it out on my fabric. This is why before the class started, I encouraged you to make sure you get scrapped fabrics, calicos, muslins, or even linings, okay, and you can test with it, okay, so that you can see the outcome of what you're doing. It can encourage you. If at the end of the day the pattern did not give us the fit that we are hoping for, if there is nothing wrong in going back to adjust it. I don't want you to feel like, because my pattern did not work out at the first go, I've done rubbish. No, pattern drafting involves you testing it out, and for you to test it out is to ensure that if there is any mistake, you can easily adjust it. So readjusting your patterns is part of the pattern drafting process. So I don't want you to be discouraged if at the first go your pattern did not fit perfectly on yourself or on your dress form. It is part of the process. So I'm going to spell it out here so that it can actually sink into our head. So the first thing we want to do, of course, is to draft out our basic block. So one of the first step of pattern drafting process is drafting out the basic block. Now, some people call the blocks slippers, some people call it blocks. British call it slipper, America call it blocks. Who cares? All we know is that they are patterns, alright? Nigerian man would say it is pattern. As long as it is a pattern, it is a pattern. We don't care if it's a block or a block. Now, the first step to pattern drafting process is drafting out the basic blocks. And the basic blocks are number A, our basic bodies block. The second is our basic skirts block. Now the third is our basic trousers block. The fourth is our basic sleeve. Some people still call it block, some people just call it pattern. Okay, so these are the four basic blocks in pattern drafting. Now, what are blocks, you might ask? Now, blocks are half of the, or what are they are called, How do I put it? What's the English that I use? Should I use empty? No. They are scanty. Okay. Now they are scanty patterns that involve one half of whatever garment you're trying to make. Now, we in fashion designing we have four major parts. Now, if you draw a human being, okay, let's try and draw a human being, for instance. So, this is Quincy. Yes, this is me. I don't have a T, please. Okay, so this is me. Okay, now the body is made up of four parts. Okay, now we have our bodies, our blouse, which we call our bodies. Okay, and then we have our skirts. Am I right? Now from this skirt we can have our trousers, right? The one that fills our leg. Are you following? Now we also have our sleeves, right? So we have one, two, three, four. So these are what makes a complete garment for a human being. So if I combine my bodies and my skirt, I will have a gown or a dress. If I combine my bodies and my trousers, I will have what we call jumpsuits. If I combine my bodies and my sleeve, I will have, a bodice with a sleeve. If I combine one, two with my trousers, I'll have a jumpsuit with a sleeve. So basically, any garment we are sewing always ends up with this form. You can't do without them. They are the main, or rather the foundation blocks from which other garments can be made from. So a block is usually one half. That is one half. Because it's a scanty pattern, it does not need to contain a lot of details, okay? Because you will need to adjust it to the style or design that you want. So there is no need to start adding too much details in it. So it's scanty. And because it's scanty, it's usually one half, one half, one half of the other part of the garment. All right. The same applies to the sleeve. Now, the reason why a sleeve is not called a block is because a sleeve has a front and a back together, so it cannot be called a block. All right. Okay, now if you have any questions about the basics block, you can always ask me. Now we're going to, of course, be looking at each of the block individually through this course, and then I'll show you other aspects of it. So the first step to pattern drafting is drafting out the basic block. Now the second process is called adjusting the blocks. Now, to adjust the blocks, you will need to know pattern drafting techniques, okay? You will need to employ pattern drafting techniques like one, our famous one that we already know could be slash and spread. The other is what we call dot manipulation. And the other is what I like to call slash and reduce. Or you can call it dot closure. Okay. Then the fourth one is the one I like to call what do we call it again? Pattern magic. Okay. Then the fifth one and the fifth one is called TL cutting. Okay, so you can employ these pattern drafting techniques to adjust your blocks. Now, to adjust your blocks. So we're also going to be looking at these techniques individually. We're going to be doing projects on them to see how we can apply them to our patterns. So after adjusting your blocks, the next thing you are going to do is to add what we call number 3, adding seam allowances and ease. Okay, now for those of us who are not very familiar with some pattern drafting terms like seam allowances, now seam allowances are the uh, extra fabric that you add to your patterns in order to ensure that your fabrics can be sewn together. Okay, so if you bring out an outfit, say for instance I have a blouse here. Okay, now when you open the wrong side of it, you can see an extra seam at the wrong side of the fabric. Now this is what we call the right side of the fabric, because this is the side you are wearing outside, and then inside of the fabric is what we call the wrong side of it. Now most fabric have dull face at the wrong side, and then the front is always, or the right side is always shining. Okay, so now if you look at this edge, you can see an extra fabric left that helps to hold the fabrics together. Now this extra fabric is what we call seam allowance. It allows you to be able to join your fabrics together when you're sewing. Now ease allowance on the other side, this is the allowance you add, or the extra fabric you add to your fabric in order to ensure easy movement. Now one of the critical areas you can add ease is at the elbow, at the knee, at the ankle, at the, well, you add ease. You can also add ease at the bust area. Okay, these are the areas you can add ease, so you can include them in your patterns while you are drafting. Now for those of you who are very familiar with digital patterns, you will notice that on the leaflet of the digital patterns, or the physical patterns that you buy, they always indicate on the leaflet the ease that was included in the pattern, so that you will know how to sew them together. The same applies with the seam allowances. Okay, so I'm just going to write here a seam allowance is the extra fabric you add to your pattern to enable joining of the fabrics. Why sewing? Why ease allowance on the other hand is the extra fabric you add to your pattern to ensure easy movements of some critical areas of the body. Okay, e.g. the elbow, knee, crotch, armhole, ankle, etc. So these are the areas you can add ease to on your pattern. Okay, you can even add to your bust if you think your bust is too much. So the first step, like we said, is to draft out the basic bodice block, right? The second step is to adjust your blocks using pattern drafting techniques. Then the third is adding ease and seam allowances. So we're going to go to the fourth process of it. The fourth process is to test your fabric. You test your pattern. So the fourth is testing pattern on dummy or live model. So in this case, if you do not have a dress form, I will encourage you to make one or purchase one, or you can use yourself as a model to test your patterns. Now, I would of course require you to send pictures of you testing your patterns. I want to see how your patterns look on you. So in this class, you're going to be testing it out. So please, if you have not gotten your scrapped fabrics yet, if you have not gotten your linings or your calicoes and muslin, make sure you get them, because you're going to be testing out your designs, okay, so that we can see how your patterns are doing. Okay, then number 5, after testing your patterns and perhaps you find out that it doesn't fit very well, you'll have to note those areas that don't fit and readjust them. So the 5th step is readjusting your patterns. Readjusting your patterns where necessary. Okay, so if your pattern does not come out the way you want it, you have to note those areas that do not fit very well, and then take it back to the table and note it on your pattern and adjust it. Okay, then the 6th the 6th step, after readjusting your pattern and you where necessary and you have made the necessary adjustment, the next thing of course is to cut out your pattern on fabric. Okay, this is the 6th and final step of pattern drafting. So you can see the various steps of pattern drafting. Next, I'll be showing you how I'll be giving you a little bit or introducing you into the pattern drafting techniques.